Life is so uncertain, and sometimes we feel so uncertain, regardless of what's going on in life out there. And it can be really tough to keep up with all of those demands. It can be really tiring, really draining, get people down. We just want to stop sometimes. How do we keep going through it all?
I think it's such a timely question, right? I have to not think about AI too close to bedtime. Otherwise, I have a small existential crisis about what is even going to exist as a business. Where am I going to sit? Where does the value come from? And I just that's a sleepless night. And then geopolitically, you open the news and there's an atrocity a day, if not multiple. And then you're trying to build a business amongst it, which has about 1 million pieces of uncertainty in my case, or you're trying to help leaders navigate it who are really going through it. So I think the first thing is coming back. I think the things I'm trying, one is to not develop apathy for the things that I can't control. So it's really easy, and I'm really guilty of it, of looking at things that feel super overwhelming in the wider context and going, well, I can't impact it, so I'm just not going to think about it. That is probably not the recipe for success, because we just become more and more taken by the tide. But I guess the other thing I am trying to do is really be aware of what can I influence and on what timeframes, and within that, what are my actual goals. So for me, a lot of reflection recently has been about what life am I trying to build with this business, not what business am I trying to build with my life. Because it's so easy when you don't quite know, when you're building something new, particularly if you're a solo founder. I have 2 businesses, one of which I have a co-founder in, one of which I'm sole founder. And when you have a co-founder, it's easier to come together and give each other that structure and that purpose and co-set a vision. It's still easy to get off track with that, but it's easier. But in the business I'm on my own in, it's so easy to just drift from and be completely reactive from what am I being asked to do from clients, what opportunities are coming up. And I've always been, I think one of the red threads through my career is saying yes to lots of things and seeing where that takes me. But I think I am reaching maybe a life stage, maybe a reflection over time that doesn't always serve me. In fact, sometimes it's really harmful to my mental health, but also to the long term of what I'm trying to build. So yeah, philosophical answer, I'm happy to get into any of the details on that, but that's the broad brush.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the show, or back to the show for those of you who aren't new here. Getting lots of new faces these days, and so I just wanted to take a quick sec to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Seven, and also to give you a quick announcement. As a little bit of background, this show used to be very focused on what it meant to be a leader, but I quickly realized I already had my answer, which is that I believe you already are one. And it's just about becoming more of that person you want to be. So we're talking about the world, self-leadership, personal development, humanity, discovery, self-discovery, and so much more. This is a place where deep conversations happen in a way that helps you become more of that person you want to be. And so if you appreciate that and you want to help us grow, but I know you're tired of people hearing, we've been hearing this for over a decade, like and subscribe and share the episode, and I get it, but look, it is genuinely the biggest and best thing you can do. I don't play ads or any crap like that. I do this and take this time to say thank you because I appreciate you and where this show is going. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Lots of love, and let's get on with the episode. What was your answer before and what is your answer now to this question of what life am I trying to build with this business versus what business am I trying to build with this life? Where did you start and where have you come to?
So when I first, really lightning background, I spent a lot of time in corporate innovation, working with really large entities who are trying to get ahead of the next innovations, whether that was internal innovations, what tools should we be using, what better ways of working, or external, how do we build the thing that's going to otherwise disrupt us in the market.
And was that like as an early business or was that like your first job?
That was my first job. Okay. Well, I worked in startups before that. It was my first full-time, fully dedicated.
Real job. Yeah.
I did that for a while. I was head of training at the company. So I was designing big accelerator programs, big training programs across really large organizations, delivering them. Then I spent some time as a venture builder, so coming up with ideas from scratch and then getting them investment. And when I quit that last job, I didn't have a business idea I was trying to build. I just knew I wanted more freedom to create some sort of impact that I could determine. So what was tricky for me in the venture builder model was that we would be given a space by the corporate, and that was intellectually fascinating. Like, where do they want to own new ideas? Where do they want to see the future of the company? But it was completely determined by that company. And I was increasingly thinking, I want to own a little bit more the impact I'm having. I want to be able to say, I think this space is fascinating. I'd love to do more work there. And so I quit with this idea that I would start freelancing, running this kind of workshop training that I'd been doing back in my old life as head of training, but just on a really small scale, just as a way to pay the bills. Had a mortgage, didn't want to, lose a flat. Over time, what I realized is that freelancing, I got increasing challenge. I mean, before I even fully started the business, my boyfriend told me, you're going to want to turn this into a business. I was like, don't be ridiculous. I definitely don't want to build a version of my old company. Otherwise I would have just stayed and become a partner. I wanted to build something different. But over time, there were a few things that started to shift. My co-founder challenged me, well, does it have to be the same? If you don't want to build the same company, does it have to be the same model? What didn't you want to, I didn't want this big head count that I was super reliant on. I didn't want to manage loads of people. I didn't want to end up in a sales role. So I think to me, it was this increasing challenge from people around me. Will you get to shape this? What do you want it to be? And so over time, I made the decision a few years ago now, for a couple of years, that I wanted to turn what was this freelance business into a company. And I wanted to do it differently. So I didn't want loads of in-house staff. I wanted to work with amazing founders and experts who are doing stuff in the field, who could bring those lived experiences, who could bring that live leadership challenge because they were building their own thing or leading amazing teams or had faced these challenges really head on and had the deep lived experience. So that was really exciting to me. But I think that I then kind of got into this middle section, having had this challenge, you can build what you want, to then, okay, well, now I'm building this company, so I just need to get more income and I just need to grow it in these ways. And then I got quite led by financial goals. I'm reaching a life stage where I want to be able to take maternity leave at some point. That as a founder with no one else in the company, you're like, how does that work? Am I just going to be working through it? How would I do that? So then got quite led by the financial, okay, well, I need to turn over this amount so I can afford to pay myself and hire someone to replace me for a period of time. And then increasingly was just hitting baby burnout with the business. There were bits I still loved. There were still a million pinch me moments a week. I've never reached the point where I didn't have those. But in between those amazing moments of delivering something passionate, working with people and seeing the impact, I would feel really flat. I'd feel like this huge pressure that I wasn't thinking strategically enough, that I was missing opportunities, that wasn't pushing fast enough, pushing far enough. And that's also really hard to confront when you're spending your time trying to train other people to build something new. It then starts to develop this well, am I a fraud if I feel like I'm failing in my own business? And not because we were failing financially, but just because we weren't hitting my targets fast enough, or every time we hit a target, I would move it. Classic found mentality, right next. And so I've been investing the last few months in actually being part of a group getting coaching as opposed to the one delivering it. And it's been life-changing because it really has started to say, well, what do you want your week to look like? And little things I used to work a 4-day week years and years ago. And I thought I was the most productive I've ever been. And then a job said I couldn't do it, so I kind of lost it. And I lost that sense of that being the goal. And when I was just freelancing at the beginning of this, it was so easy. And then building a business, I've got to give it everything. Actually, I'm going to try and go back to, a 9-day fortnight. So 5 days one week, 4 days the next. And just those little tweaks to be able to say, well, what do I want this to deliver? And is it delivering what I need? And the answer for me was, in some cases, absolutely. And in other cases, really failing. And I was just ignoring those kind of self-failures.
There's a resilience to keep that is required to keep going in those moments of what you described as baby burnout, which I love, actually, because I've been going through that myself recently, also realizing that when it's not strong enough of burnout, like when the challenge isn't big enough, we don't usually recognize it, especially if you're really harsh on yourself. So how did you keep up with that? How did you keep resilient through those mini moments?
I think I also always want to be really careful about talking about burnout. And I haven't quite worked out whether I'm over self-policing it or whether it is the right level of talking about it. But I'm really aware, like I know people who've had full burnout, and I know that it is another level of crippling and it takes a lot longer to recover from. But I had a moment last year, 2024, beginning of 2024, where something big happened personally, which my work allowed me to be there for completely, which was like the biggest privilege, which if I had a job, there's no way I could have taken the amount of time off I did. But honestly, before that happened, lost a family friend and I got to be there to kind of help in that process. But before that happened, I was kind of 2 days before that started, I'd gone to a founder event and seen a dear founder friend, and she'd looked at me and gone, "Babe, you need to stop now. Like you're not yourself. You're up. You're like, when are we stopping?" I was like, no, it's nearly Christmas. Like I'm stopping. Like honestly, I'm stopping next week. And then life happens, and I think what that really reinforced in me, and I kind of came back and honestly, like I didn't care about business. So like February 2024. I did not care about the business at all. Like I came back because I was like, I can see logically that like I need to pay my mortgage and this is what's allowing me to pay my mortgage. But the flatness I felt, the level of like, honestly apathy about it, I was like, I just don't care what I'm building anymore. I don't. And for me, it was like a short-lived period. It was like a month. I did some things that helped me really powerfully get out of it, which is why I say baby burnout, because I appreciate the real burnout. So it's not that quick to get out of it. But it really reinforced in me this warning signal of that level of exhaustion that I was getting to before this happened. When you're getting there, life hits you. Mm-hmm. And so I've got a little bit better at detecting, hey, this is maybe a feeling because I pushed too far, not a feeling because I'm doing the wrong thing. Because I did come out of it and I did go, I love this business. I want to keep building it. So I think there's is like a training you go through when you just push through it because you have to, and you come out the other side and you realize what it was. But also I think the people around you, like there is no way I would get through any of these moments without, and it's a complete mixture of also people who celebrate your wins with you. So like I got on a call with my assistant the other day and she was like, I just wanted like, before we started the call, she was, and you know, she handles the person who does our accounts. She was like, you're having a really good year. And I was like, oh, thanks. And she was like, yeah, no, can we sit with that? And I was like, oh, like, yeah, that is actually really good. Yeah. And then similarly, someone we both know, Andy Aim, an incredible, he's a board advisor in my other business. He comes and does training for one of my companies and delivers for us. And, you know, I was messaging him last week about some work we'd both been delivering, and some of the feedback had like made me cry because it was so sweet. And he said, like, do you ever stop and reflect about what, like, how well you've done with GuessWorks? And I was like, no, it's on my to-do list. And he was like, I need you to do that next week.
It's on my being kind to myself is on my to-do list.
Celebrating the wins will happen.
That's the most founder thing I've ever heard. That's so good. Yeah. There's a small piece there on the burnout that I think is really interesting, because I do think we have different levels of burnout. We can have emotional burnout where we've got apathy, but we can keep going, for example. Mental burnout where we just have brain fog, we can't think. And I've actually got a sort of a case study, makes it sound very cold, but a personal story, which is my grandmother who burnt out, but not in the way we would consider burnout. So I guess a little bit of background. My grandmother is like one of the most inspiring people in my life. Like, she was the businesswoman in a room of 3,000 men before it was cool, right? And this came at a cost.
Yeah.
Where she just worked enormous amounts. I mean, like, developed insomnia because she would just keep working overnight, downing coffee and smoking cigarettes and all these things, keeping her away. And then she had periods of time where she just wouldn't sleep, and she genuinely didn't notice the difference. And eventually, and she never burnt out the way we would describe burnout now, but it caught up with her.
Yeah.
And she's 81 now. In her 50s, her health just snapped. Thing after thing after thing, MS, ME, survived cancer, barely able to like move. Now to this day doesn't leave the flat, but like 20 years of that. She survived through, I mean, basically the last 20, 30 years of her life, the cost of the business success she had over 25 to 35 years of her life has been the last 20 to 30 years of her life. And she categorically says it was not worth it. Now, there's a lot of other pieces to this, right? The time she grew up in, when she was born, what her family life was like, etc. But I think the point is, at no point did she burn out the way that someone has, I don't know, corporate burnout or startup burnout after a couple of years. But it can look different for different people, I think, is what I'm getting at here, right? And so I think if someone feels like they're burning out, but it doesn't look as bad as someone else's, it's still worth taking the time they need to take out.
And I think the idea that it needs to get to the real burnout, it's not even real burnout, but the full extent of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we don't want to wait for it to get there, right? And I think the fact I'm still hitting baby burnouts is that's a sign of me messing up the prioritization of myself, not me nailing founder life. But it's taken me a long time to realize how much I have internalized the idea that busy means good. So when I see people and they're like, how are you? And the problem is, it's often true. But my first reaction is often like, oh, it's really busy. I think I said to you when we walked in the room. Like,
yeah, literally.
And I do like these weekly wraps on LinkedIn, and the main feedback, everyone's like, oh my God, you're so busy. And the point I'm always trying to make with those weekly wraps is a lot of it is like, I'm also going to go and hang out with my friend this week because they're visiting from another country, or my brother is over from Bermuda and I'm going to hang out with him. So I'm trying to get that work-life balance. But the problem is you can still be always doing. And I think often founders, if we're taking time off work to do the other stuff around it, it's not that we're taking off time off work to actually rest. Or we're doing it because rest is the reward for the busy period, or the response to the busy period, not hey, I'm trying so hard to unlearn the idea that I need to earn rest, that I can rest when I'm done. Like, no, I can rest as I go so that I don't get done.
And so there are periods where the answer is giving yourself more of what your body needs from you.
Yeah.
There are periods where you need to keep going anyways, and you need to stay or develop resilience.
Yeah.
How do you develop the resilience to keep going in those times where you really can't take a break? Or maybe you just don't want to. That's not what you need, but you're just slapped by life.
I think maybe it's looking at what do we define as resilience, because I think the idea for me is often like resilience is pushing through, right? And it's kind of, there's a children's book called Bear Hunt. And the idea is they're going on a bear hunt, they're going to catch a big one, they're not scared. And go through all these bits where they hit these, long sweepy grass, can't go under it, can't go over it, oh no, we'll have to go through it, big deep mud, all sorts. And ultimately, like, they go, the answer is like, we'll have to go through it. And I think that's been like a motto, and my family have used it a lot through some hard times, like, we'll have to go through it. But I think there is a point where, check you actually want to be on that bear hunt. Like, they get to the end, they find the bear, and they run home being chased by a bear. Like, you really didn't need to go on that bear hunt in the first place. So, like, am I chasing it actually? Like, is the goal I'm working towards worth it? I think the other thing to check is this a short-term push? In which case, what can I arm myself with that's going to make this doable? So that might be things like, asking friends to come to you rather than going to them, because actually you still want to hang out with your friends, but you don't have the energy to do loads of travel. It might be that you need to actually budget for getting some pre-prepared meals delivered, or, and there's a privilege if you can do those adjustments financially a lot of the time. Some founders are completely at the end of their everything. And so you can't be like, okay, well, I'll just, order delivery or get a cooked meal. But what adjustments can you make? And one of the big things, I went through a process of getting ADHD coaching, which was fascinating. One of the big things it taught me is how often we play life on hard mode, because we teach ourselves, I've just got to get through this. And like, very true for neurodiversity, we're taught you've just got to adapt yourself to the environment and to the people who expect you to think like normal, process like normal and big quotation marks, right? And so one of the big things that I ended up working on my coach is like, how do we make this easy or enjoyable? Not how do I just do it? And I think if you're going through a period when you have to be resilient, rather than just saying, how am I going to get through this in terms of like, what do I have to do to get to the other side? Is there anything you could do to be gentler in that period? Who can you ask for help from? And I'm so aware that sometimes that help feels impossible to ask. If you're like a sole founder, if you're leading a team and you don't feel like you can tell people below you that you're struggling, it feels like you can't ask that help. That, in my mind, is the biggest leadership strength you can be flexing when you need to be resilient, is not just, how can I deliver all of this? And I cannot overstate how important it is to build that behavior in times of ease, not in times of hard. Because if you're not used to asking for help, when you don't need it, when you need it, you won't ask.
There's a level of energy you are describing that someone needs to have at basically all times, but not at the times that... I don't mean to make it sound overwhelming. What I mean is, like, I need to have a strong enough intention, motivation, desire for whatever the long-term thing is, because I'm going to have to go through it, like you said.
I think that's true.
And so, like, what is a good enough motivation? I don't even know if motivation is the right word, but like, how do you know whatever gets you up in the morning is good enough?
I think that's just so personal, right? And I think it changes as life stages. Like, I used to say so arrogantly and with like so much privilege, like, money doesn't drive me. Like, and that was because I was just like in a privileged place where I didn't have to worry about it, right? Like, my job paid my bills and I was fine and safe. And, money didn't have to be the driver. I could go down to 4 days a week and still afford to pay my bills. Now when if I don't bring in enough business to the company, I can't pay my bills. Money is a huge motivator. But I also know it doesn't quite do it for me, because I could be making 10 times the amount I'm making and be miserable. So I think it's so personal to each person. And I think we have this also like almost moralistic sense of like, well, that's a more worthy motivation. And I think that's maybe a little bit dangerous, right? I think we need to be real with ourselves about what does and doesn't move us in the short and long term. And also, again, with my ADHD, I can have a really long-term motive and that will not work, right? Sometimes it's like, I know I like want this business to succeed, and part of that is probably filling in my VAT return so I don't get, binned off as a director. But I really hate filling in my VAT returns, and I really hate checking them, and I will put that task off until the very last minute, because actually my bigger motivator is urgency, not importance. And so actually, like, what I've relearned is like, well, how do I redesign it then? So I'm not fighting that urgency, because what used to happen before is I was like, the level of self-talk about that driver was so negative. Like, oh, you're just a procrastinator. You're just so easily distracted. Like, why can't you just do this really simple task? Come on, Hattie, like, you're being lazy. You're being blah, 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 insert horrible things. Actually, like, hey, I need the urgency. How do I re-level urgency so it's not the last minute, because that's actually too much strain to put myself under, because then life happens and suddenly I'm really in trouble. But also like have enough urgency that it works, and or decide I don't need to do that thing. Because the other thing is we can have the motivation but not check, well, should I be doing the things that I'm doing together? And I think we're really bad, coming back to your grandma story, I think we're really incapable, we're just not taught how to weigh cost, not just financial cost, but the value of our time.
There's a cost to everything.
Yeah, and there's like a mantra cannot remember who it's from, so apologies for not quoting correctly, but if it basically says every day I meditate 15 minutes unless I'm really busy that day, and then I meditate for an hour. I think we're built to be so reactive, like just psychologically, everything in our lives is built to be immediate, reactive. I want it on Amazon Prime delivery. I need 15-minute groceries. Like, what is this mindset we've got into? But we are so bad at pausing. And I think actually one of the breakthroughs I've had in my kind of coaching was we have this really busy period every year where we do a load of summer schools. So we're training like teenagers in innovation, leadership, how to build new ideas really fast, really fun, really intense, exhausting. And I was chatting to my group about, is this a period just to push through? And we kind of got to like, yeah, it is. And there are some things I can do to make that more pushable through. Like 2 weeks ago, I delivered a day of training and then delivered an evening workshop. I didn't need to do that evening workshop. It was repeating the next week. I paid someone else to deliver the evening workshop. Like, it doesn't need to be me. So there are things you can do along that way. But then I get to the end of that period and my default is, great, I now have time for the strategy I've been putting off because I've been in delivery. And the question I got asked in the group coaching is, well, hang on, will you have any emotional brain energy reserves at that point left to do that? And the answer was no, obviously not. I'm going to be knackered. And so actually the answer is, as of next Tuesday, I'm going to take 2.5 weeks off. So just over half of August. It works well because it's a slow month for everyone. So there's like not the fear, and it's just after our busiest period. So you've got the like cash in the bank that calms the founder nerves of taking time off. But that is a choice I get to make. And as soon as I made that choice, I was like, oh my gosh, why haven't I been doing this every year? And I'm going to build it in, if I can, again for next year. And even if it's not this period, I need to do it regularly, because actually that rest has so much value. And I think what we forget when we're in it, you're so busy, you forget to remember how much better it is when you pause. And I think we've all probably got micro versions of this, right? You're worrying about a problem, you go for a walk, it solves itself on the walk. By the end of the walk, you're like, oh yeah, that was this really simple solution. It happens to me all the time. These problems that I over worry, overlook at, step away, you get clarity. I go on holiday, without doubt, I'm ending up writing down notes at in bed, because suddenly the ideas are flowing because I've given my brain a break. And I think we forget to value all of that in leadership, in building businesses, in all of it.
What, if we're talking about motivation, let's use you as an example. What gets you up in the morning?
I think mine is very people driven. So I like to see an impact, but I like to see it quite personally. So when I work with leaders, with founders, even when I am interacting with people who deliver for GuessWorks when I'm not the one delivering it, and I hear the feedback they get, or I speak to them and they tell me I love delivering this, that hits my impact sense. So for me, it's, and this has been again a big learning about how I design the company, it will never be the best financial decision for me to be delivering all of our training. It will never even be the best decision for me to deliver a fraction of the training, but I will always do it, because that feedback loop is a huge motivator for me. Last week we taught a summer school, and at the end of the week, one of the girls turned around and she said, if I could relive any week of my life, it would be this one.
Interesting.
I teared up. I was like in front of the teenagers, basically.
That validation, yeah.
But I was like, we did that. And beforehand, Andy Aim had been delivering we did a 4-week chunk. He'd done 2 weeks, I'd done 2 weeks. And in his 2 weeks, he was sending me the feedback, and it was telling him how life-changing it was and how much their confidence had grown and how much their sense of self had grown. And you look at that and you go, I love what we do. And I'm so incredibly grateful that we get to work with the people we do. Every time someone like Andy goes and delivers for us, the amount of pride I feel, extraordinary. Like, I still can't believe people like the people who do our training will work for me and for the company and then come back and say they love it. Like, that is pinch me 5,000 times and I still will feel like I'm in a dream.
And if you had to describe that as an emotion, a feeling, an experience, what like word or a few words would you use?
I think for me, one, gratitude. Like I want to feel grateful in the work I'm doing. Like that sense of I'm so grateful that I get to do this with the people I get to do it with and for the people I get to do it with. If I lose that, then probably my motivation is gone. What other emotions? It makes me excited. Like I get so inspired by these people. I come away from meetings with a million new ideas that I'm excited to implement with them. And yeah, I think really proud.
Yeah, I love it. The reason I ask is because that earlier question of how do you know if the thing you're doing is the right thing? Obviously, what the thing is will be different for everyone, like you said. I think for the vast majority of us, if the thing that gets me out of bed, whatever it is leaving me with those feelings you just described, that sense of I get to, not I have to.
And actually, sorry, just picking up on that, when I had baby burnout, everything was I have to. And one of the things I realized, like one of the interventions I can't remember someone made, therapist or ADHD coach, someone made was like, let's reframe that. And I sat with a piece of paper and I wrote in the middle, I get to. And I brainstormed around that. And since then, I've tried really hard when I'm slipping into that I have to a sense check, well, actually, do I have to? If I've got that sense of like, I have to, well, okay, could it be someone else? Could I pay someone else to do this? Is that a better use of my time and my energy and my emotion? Great. And if not, okay, what does having to do this allow me to do? Like, what does this get me to still? Because as soon as you've got that repeating loop of like, I have to, either something's broken in the framing or something's broken in what you're doing. Sometimes it is just the framing though, not. I think we get into the habit of feeling like, I have to go and deliver another workshop tonight and I'm tired. I love delivering. Well, what mindset am I in? But we get into these headspaces as well.
You used the word safety a couple of times. Where does your safety, probably not your physical safety, although maybe, but probably more likely your psychological safety, where does that factor into this like equation?
Yeah, so for me, two things. One is I'm not someone who's I don't think I work well under financial insecurity. Insecurity. So lots of founders are like, I do my best thinking when it's like, I'm about to run out of money. And I'm like, no, because then all I can think about is short-term solutions to the problem. I'm not thinking long-term. I'm not asking or answering some of these big questions about, well, why am I doing this and how am I going to do it? So I think I need a base level of financial security, which has been really interesting because it's meant that I've actually taken some long-term contracts that are slightly aside from what we do as our bread and butter, but that allow me to go, okay, well, financially secure. And now I can make better decisions. Great.
Yeah, I'm very similar. So I feel that. And there is like an archetype, especially of like entrepreneur or like hustle culture, finance, bro, energy. And it's because of, it's often because of what we call a saboteur, a sabotaging voice. So we have like, there are versions of us that exist simultaneously internally, right? And one is the 8-year-old you that's still an 8-year-old child, for example. One is your wiser self that knows better, that is, knows they need that time we described earlier. And often some of them are these sabotaging voices. And one of them might say, this has been what's made you successful. So keep doing it and keep going. And often I ask the question, okay, well, what if you had all that energy without any of the downsides? What if it was all constructive creation mode energy and it didn't have to come from what can be very draining, which is survival, when you're not, let's say you're moving faster, right? When you put the pedal to the metal, you do go faster, but you also use more fuel disproportionately and can't go very far.
And also you're potentially just using your fuel in places you don't need, right? Because I think this is the other thing, when you're in that scarcity, you're having to do so much that isn't. There's a really nice concept I love for founders, which is having an internal charge out fee. So we have this rate of like, particularly if you're in contracting world, here's how much I'm going to charge you for my day. We don't have that internally because we often, don't have a huge amount of money in the bank to pay for stuff. But however little money you have in the bank, try and think about, okay, well, if I could get this time back and spend it elsewhere, what is that time worth internally? This isn't some rate I can charge anyone else, but this is what am I willing to pay? And so what I've done in the business is like step that up from, at one point it was like £12 an hour, right?
Okay.
Minimum London living wage. Like, can I pay someone to do this for me? Okay, great. Next, it went up to 18 an hour, then 20, then 25. Now I'm kind of broadly at like 110 to 200, depending on, you know, where that month is. But actually that, then having that hourly rate where you know, well, okay, if I didn't have to do that task, I could go and earn this amount of money, or I could go and deliver this value to the business, and that's a good trade-off, I think is really important. And not to be overwhelmed by feeling like, oh, I have to start at this big number. Like, start at, you know, the living wage. Don't pay someone under the living wage, but start there and see actually what can you pay someone to do that can free up your time to do the things you need to do. And then make sure you're doing the things you actually need to do.
So that helps you create that safety.
And also, I think a huge amount of my psychological safety is very interpersonal. You know, one of my big psychological drivers is, you know, the need to be loved and to love. And so when I have that in my personal life, and my, you know, my people are safe and my people are happy, and my people have got me, and I have like an extraordinary, I think there is a point of resilience that does also come from living through crap and the things you fear most. And I have tested that. You know, I've had friends who I have texted a cryptic message and they've gone, well, I have got plans, but if you need me, I can come. And I go, can you come? And they're there within 20 minutes. You know, and I've tested it with my dad and called him and said, like, can you come get me? And he thought it was 15 minutes away. And I'm like, no, I'm an hour and a half away. And he's like, that's fine, I'll be there in an hour and a half, not 15 minutes. You know, those little things. And, you know, my dad's about to move to France, so he'll be there in 14 hours. But you know, that like psychological safety and having the people around you be okay. And I think that's not to be undervalued. And, you know, I think what's really hard when you're trying to lead an uncertainty, and there's big uncertainty structuring your life, it's so brutal. Like, and I've you know, been through big periods of that and go through big periods of that for different reasons. And then I think that the thing I'm relearning is you can't expect the same things of yourself. So actually, when you're going through it, my expectations of my output is identical. That's so harsh. I would not expect that of anyone else. Why on earth do I think I'm superhuman? And I'm definitely not. So like, why am I willing to pay the cost of then brutalizing myself in that period, both mentally and physically?
Why are you?
Why am I?
Yeah. Why are you like that?
Oh, why am I like that? I mean, so many theories. I think there is a world where I honestly, some bits I have theories on, some bits I have no idea. I mean, I grew up in a family that I have like 500 cards from my mum saying, you know, whatever you do, we couldn't be proud of you. Like, I grew up knowing that my parental love was not attached to output and outcome. And yet I have a deep need to impress and to use my teachers and authority figures and to be, and like, I'm that person, like in a spin class, I want the instructor to love me and think I'm really putting in the effort. And,
Yeah.
you know, and I've always been that person, like going through school, it mattered to me to be, you know, top performing. I wanted you know, I always had that driver to be one of the top in class, to be getting the accolades. So I don't know where that comes from, because I've got this like really stable sense of like, my parents don't care. You know, I remember getting into Oxford and calling my dad and he cried. And I was like, see, I got you. You do care. And he was like, no, I'm just really happy because you're really happy. Like, I'm not more proud of you right now. Really proud of you, but I'm so proud of you always. Like, it's not attached to this. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. But like, also, you know, I did this thing. And I think like there is this, so I think a lot of it is like personal drive to prove to myself. Maybe it's this. I've talked actually to friends a lot about this. I think when you get some like, particularly when your kind of brain, so even though I have ADHD, my brain has always done really well in exams. It's done really well in the things that schools reward. And so growing up, I got all these like lovely accolades and got this like really nice recognition that I was good and smart. And I think for a long time when I was younger, I had a real trouble with like friends and got quite bullied because I was like this absolute geek who was reading Oliver Twist at 8, and that's not cool apparently. But I had this real drive to like keep going. And I think there is this point where, for me at least, it's been about living up to my potential.
Yeah.
And that is quite self-policed. It's not, I want other people to tell me I'm doing well in it. I need that external recognition. But at the end of the day, like the driver, I think, is still coming from me. It's coming from, and other people can tell me the expectations and then I'll internalize that. But there is still this like very much like, well, if I have the potential to do that, am I living up to it? And a lot of my friends who've gone through similar educational backgrounds and similar early educational like success have the same thing of like, well, am I living up to that? I got told so much, I had so much potential. Am I delivering on that?
And how do you respond to that? And I'm thinking about almost like the opposite of your position. There are folks out there, and being very candid, like I'm one of them, that feel like no matter what you do, no one believes in you. Like the extreme opposite of what you've described.
Yeah.
And then you're the only one who has to believe in, you have to believe in yourself. Well, then that's also very self-policing. So actually, maybe there's more overlap than it initially sounds like. And it's like, how do you deal with this belief issue? How do you, I'm actually not even 100% sure what the question is. Like, there's a balance or a level of external and internal belief.
I think like some nice things you can do, like I don't want to pretend that I fully get it, right? Because I think if you grow up with like, and there's a bit of a joke in my family, my mum's mum, like if you met her in the street, she would tell you were loved. Like if she met you as a stranger, like that was her vibe. Mm-hmm. Like just who she was, like everyone is that.
I love that.
And so like unsurprising that I grew up in that atmosphere and and I think, my parents put a lot of effort into that, but it also came quite intuitively, particularly my mum was raised in that as well. So I don't want to pretend that I know what it's like to grow up without that, because I think that would be really arrogant to be like, well, I can assume what it's like to not have that. But I think the things that help me with like the interrupting the self-belief talk that isn't constructive. So we got given a great exercise the other day, which is like particularly about a given thing to write down everything you think about it, just like free flow, everything that comes into your head. And then pause and read it back through circling what is a narrative. So like what is like not objectively provable or proven? What is a narrative? And then rewrite it without the narratives. And that's quite a jarring task when you realize how much is narrative, how much is that. And I think actually maybe a good story, when I wanted to start delivering workshops and training, I had a completely different background to everyone I'd seen delivering in that context. So everyone I'd seen was like a serial founder. They had all these startups they could talk to that they'd built. And when I said I wanted to do this training, my mentor at the time, who I still loved to pieces, he's still a really dear friend, he turned around and said, well, yeah, you can probably do it in front of corporates, but I don't think you'll ever be credible to do this for startups. So we'll train you up, but like there's probably a limit to where we can use you delivering this. Internalized narrative, not just mine. Someone I respect and trust has told me this. So one of the things they invested in was they got me this pitch coach. And I assumed we'd spend time like, vocal warm-ups and like, how do I present better with my body language and my hand gesture and everything else. We spent like 90% of the session talking about my intro. Because when I introduced myself on stage, I was just basically mimicking a format I'd seen other people deliver. And basically my entire opening talk, no matter what I said, was basically saying, please believe I'm credible. And like, please don't put up your hand and say, why are you talking to us about this? Why should we listen to you? Because that would be really hurtful. And it didn't come across in that way. Actually, how it came across was, I'm amazing and you're lucky to have me here. And frankly, I'm exceptional. And it came across as arrogance. It came across as overcompensation, because it was overcompensation of deep insecurity. And what we ended up doing was finding a way to introduce me that was not a mirror to something that wasn't true. So the problem was the narrative of you've not done any of these things was true, correct. I hadn't done the things that they had done. the narrative of therefore you're not credible was not true. But what I had to do in order to try and rebuild the self-belief wasn't to try and argue with the first one and say, well, yeah, no, I haven't done it, but like I've done these things that are basically the same. It was to say, well, where does my credibility come from then? Okay, here's what I have done and why that matters, even though it's completely different to the model I've seen before. And I think starting to find some of those self-talk, self-drivers that feel comfortable. And like the analog I can give is like it should feel like putting on a slipper, not like putting on a stiletto, right? And sometimes you put on the stiletto and you're like strutting your stuff and you're feeling, cool and great. And there is something to that, but you're not feeling 100% yourself and the comfort level isn't there. And, by the end of a day wearing stilettos, my feet will hurt like hell. By the end of a day in slippers, I still feel, super comfortable and super me. And I think there's a point of whatever your driver is, whatever your background is, starting to do some exercises to separate what is serving you in those narratives and what's not. And are you trying to disabuse narratives by taking what they're saying as true and inarguable and the only way to view something?
What shifted for you when you did this practically, right? So I think what I'm thinking about now, because I've been in an actually similar-ish space to yourself, but like a lot longer than I was credible for, and then kind of left that space, which has made me even less credible. And so I'm like, okay, practically, what does this mean that I do? I think there's a bit of brain fog that I've had recently about like, what are someone's next steps when they have that self-belief and they're like, okay, I've worked on my intro. I know why I'm credible, but I'm not too arrogant. I still need to go out there and like pitch that to people, sell it, communicate it. And actually you can maybe use this as an example, like how do you train people to communicate their thing, to sell the thing, to build and work on what they're doing, even if when you build that credibility, okay, practically what's next?
Yeah, so I think there's different component parts, right? So there's a component part of how are you turning up in a way that is authentic because people perceive inauthenticity. And by the way, just to interrupt something gently, no one else thinks you're not credible. I've worked in the spaces you worked in. I've known founders who you've worked with. The message I never got was, well, I have 7 here. Why are we listening to him? Like ever.
Okay, but at the moment, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm being very upfront with this will age interestingly. But anyway, it's like pitching for new work or like getting into any room or some of what I'm now training people in that I've been doing low key before, now more about, or even little things. And my ADHD brain doesn't like this, where like my LinkedIn is not doing as well as it used to do.
Yeah.
All these things.
LinkedIn's doing as well as it used to.
I know, but it's still, but again, like you said, it's even if I know that logically, we make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally.
That's 100% true. So I think a few things. I think one is, if you're packaging any new thing, one is, am I actually speaking the language of my customers, not just the language of me? And how am I connecting with them? So I think a lot of it is actually, once we get past this credibility point, is not about, I think we overemphasize credibility over connection. And when we don't feel credible, that's all we can think about. So of course it's what we emphasize. But actually, once you feel credible, you can kind of put that to the side, right? So the most impressive people I've met in my life, it actually took me quite some time to unearth. I was sat at a dinner next to the founder of Meetup, who then went on to found BarkBox, which, IPO'd, didn't do so well after IPO, but it did get to IPO, one of the fastest IPOs. These people you don't sit next to and they feel the need to convince you of their success or their worth. They show interest in you. So all of these people that I met that I'm subsequently most impressed by, actually the first part of the conversation, they're just trying to find a point of connection because they're interested, because they're not coming from this point of, well, I need to really quickly convince you to listen to me. So when we're having a conversation, I'm going to be dropping, here's how incredible. Actually, once we feel comfortable in that, we can kind of put it aside and be like, well, I know I'm credible. And if you want to ask about, I'm happy to talk about it. But let's just focus on the connection because that's the interesting point. And from that connection then comes deep empathy with your challenges and your pains. And then a sense of, well, because also I'm in this credible space, not this overcompensation space, where could I add value? And I don't have to force that because I know what I'm good at and I know what I can do and I've spent the time to work out my worth, then when I've connected with you, I've listened to you, I've heard what you're saying, I've got to have a bit of a commercial brain of like, well, where is the commercial opportunity? Can you afford to pay for something? Do you know you have the need to pay for it? Is it still going to be a long decision-making journey? But I'm not trying to, and I actually say this to fans all the time, but I struggle with it. So I want to be honest as well. I've been in that position where I've been coaching startups and I've been panicking about my personal finance. And I've been coaching startups that they need to do their financial model in the same week that I'm avoiding my financial advisor because I don't want him to tell me off about the fact I haven't paid myself a pension in 4 years. So like, you would be amazed at the number of people behind the scenes. And actually, I went and asked a friend who's a financial expert, whose whole business is about being a financial expert, this question. I was like, am I really messing up my life because I'm not paying my pension? I haven't started investing because I'm plugging everything into the business. And she was like, no, you're okay. Like, let's start looking at these things, but like, let's not beat yourself up in the meantime. And by the way, I haven't paid pension either because I've been building my business. And I think we need this transparency to be able to, again, know that. And recently I've said in front of founders this sense of I'm a fraud because I'm struggling and I'm stressed and I'm feeling the financial pressure. And not once has that changed someone's opinion of me, not for the better, which is really impossible to imagine, but actually really true because they then get that you're being really vulnerable and that resonates. So yeah, with them, how do you go from establishing your credibility? And by the way, I still do things that are about establishing my credibility. I post clips of me on stage at big conferences because I know that for some potential customers that will build trust. And I publish regularly talking at one podcast. That is all about building. There's an idea that content marketing, posting content isn't lead gen, it's trust gen, building trust over time. But if that's coming from a place of authenticity, it's then really easy because the second part is then how do I build a relationship with you? And so much of what I've learned about sales is it's about the relationship. The bit of sales I hate, cannot stand with a passion is actually not sales, it's lead gen. I always thought I hated sales. I love sales. As soon as I've got the person in the room, it's really interesting. It's a good point. But I say hate generating leads. If it's not a person, it's just a like prospect. And I can't connect with a LinkedIn profile. So for me, the then redesign is, okay, well, I shouldn't be doing the lead gen. I should be doing and maybe I shouldn't even be doing some of the early sales. Maybe I can get someone to do that. But all that to say is I think when we're coming, it comes back to your point about safety. When you're in that not feeling credible, you don't have psychological safety. So that's all your brain can focus on is if I just get credible, they'll believe in me. But the point is if I get credible, it's, and obviously don't be going in to give meaningful financial advice to startups if you're not a financial advisor. There are lines here. I'm not just saying the kind of, fake it till you make it. But I think we undervalue what our credibility is. And also I think that's important, actually. Once you know what you're credible for, you also know where to draw a line and say, I actually don't know that. Or you know what, I'm not the right person to talk to about that. And the more I know, the better I am at saying what I don't know. Because when I was early in my career, I felt like I had to know everything to look smart and credible. And now I know that the best, like, that's so dangerous. The best thing I can do to add value is often to say, oh, I don't know the answer to that. Let me go and check. Or you know what? I think I know the answer, but my brain is a bit fogged right now. I'm going to go and come back to you so I don't give you false information. I then have to come back awkwardly and go. And I'll say it like that, right? Really candidly, really honestly. I'm not overcompensating going, oh, yeah, and definitely, I'm just going to come back to you because I'm actually, my phone's ringing up.
Like a lion.
Obfuscating.
There's my favorite, it's going to sound like a tangent, but my favorite definition of charisma comes from Vanessa Van Edwards. And she goes, charisma is when competence meets warmth. And we think that, so what you've just described, we can fall into the trap of having no warmth because we're trying to be arrogant or seem like we know what we're doing, and of acting more competent than we are, not realizing that knowledge and competence are not the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, but because I'm competent, I'm going to go find out for you. And because I've been human, I'm really warm. And now I see more charismatic. We build that bond. And like you said there, that's when you start to build this, like, the relationship in the connection instead of just the...
I think the only thing I would disagree with on that, I love it.
Okay.
And it kind of works for my personality. But actually, if that's not your personality, there are some people for whom like warmth isn't an easy reach. It's not, they're warm when they know someone. They're warm further down the line. That's not going to come early for them. And it would almost be fake and authentic to be like really warm to someone they don't yet know.
Then the question becomes, what does warmth actually mean? But yeah, I see what you mean.
And so I think for me, charisma is about connecting to the other person in an authentic way for both of you, and absolutely that competence piece. I think the problem with the competence thing in charisma is there is so few people believe they're competent at the level they are, either under or over. I think we're all really bad at assessing down the middle ground. And I think that's dangerous. So competence for me, I wish more people knew they were competent in the things they are. And I would love people to do an audit of where are they actually competent. And I often get clients to go and ask the people around them, like, what would you say I'm competent at that I might not say I'm competent at? Because often with leadership, I get people going, well, I don't know how to lead. And they start describing what they do. And I'm thinking, well, you already lead. So let's go and talk to these people about how they perceive your leadership, because we're not starting from nothing. So yeah, I think for me, it's about the authenticity. And I think coming back to that point, when I was delivering some of my early workshops, one of my colleagues who I really liked came in and watched me deliver. And we came out and she said, oh, Hattie, I can tell you're trained by Jordan. So Jordan's this mentor who I mentioned earlier who kind of told me I could do it, but couldn't do it. But I still really admired him. And so I really mimicked his style. We are such different people. And so when she said this, immediately I was like, what a compliment. This is my mentor, the person I admire and look up to and want to be. I think he's really good at this. I want to be like him. And then I had a second of going, oh, but actually we're really different people. Our characters are fundamentally different. Our backgrounds are fundamentally different. Annoyingly, I seem to have picked up a weird way of saying really, I think, from working with him, where you're really, or like a slight American twang. You'll notice.
I noticed that earlier. So I was like, where did that come from?
I can't train myself out. I think it's come from him. / working in a very international office. That's the one word I picked up and I can't shake. Anyway, that I realized, and I think actually the last 4 years have been an even deepening of this. Delivering has to be so personal. And actually I tell geeky stories, and when I'm delivering, I'm not thick and polished. That's not my vibe. Okay, if you want thick and polished, I can give you another one of our trainers, but it's not me. I will spill coffee while talking. I fell into a stage once. I smashed a glass bottle while presenting at Sifted Summit. I am chaos,
wow.
But
what a great story.
Fun chaos. And I think if I lean into trying to be polished, I'm not delivering well. I'm the person who will be mid-delivery and say something that triggers an ADHD thought that makes me start singing BN, do, 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 BN, do, 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 do. And all the kids are looking at me like, what is she doing? But that's me. I'm bringing my personality to it. And actually that's what people connect to, is this sense that you're sharing your real self in a non-encumbered way. And obviously there's levels of what's appropriate for a given audience. You do tailor it. But you have to show up as yourself.
And I think that actually makes you feel more of that psychological safety. It becomes like a positive feedback loop, talking about feedback loops. And I'm really interested in the impact that ends up having on innovation.
Yeah.
One of my favorite geographical case studies is Sweden. Is very, very, at least relative to the rest of the West, very left-wing culture, lots of benefits, very high taxes, all these things. Per capita, they have one of the highest rates of successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And it's how does that make sense? Because we think that low taxes or whatever else is what makes for entrepreneurs. And actually, their risk is lower because in America, there are a lot of people that are homeless because they put everything into their business and the business failed. And when you have a support system around you, it almost decreases that risk. So you go in, and when a level of education is also really high, you can put all of that together, and it actually seems to increase success. But you don't fully agree.
I think I'd say that's that's part of it. But I think even if you compare the UK and America, there's a reason America does better than us in entrepreneurship, and that is a culture that embraces failure. So if you go to Silicon Valley and you've had a previously failed startup, there is a different level of excitement about that than there is in the UK. We're getting there. The cultural landscape is changing.
You think?
I do. I really do. I really do. I see it among angels. I'm starting to see it among VCs. I think there is an increased respect for having done something and failed. I actually talk to this a lot to founders who believe that I spoke to a founder the other day and she said, if I fail at this, she's talking about a co-founder dynamic and feeling unequal. And she was like, well, if I fail at this, I'm the one who's going to take the hit because it's my face that's all over it. And I was like, whoa. I actually don't know if that's a true narrative. Again, let's circle that and come back to that. But I do think it's changing. I am excited by that change. But I think if you look at and actually we were talking about this with corporate clients recently and it is related. One of the big complaints we're hearing about Gen Z in the workforce is they don't take initiative, right? They need to be handheld. They're not coming up with their own ideas. And there are some really clear things you can point to that contribute to that. But one of the things I think is that if you look at initiative taking, the ingredients are exactly the same as innovation. So number one, you need to be able to spot problems, right? So if I'm going to take initiative to do something, I need to be able to see, there's an opportunity to do something, or there's a problem to be solved, okay? Number two, I need to be able to weigh a quick intervention that doesn't overinvest too early. So what we don't want is Gen Z to be in companies and suddenly go, I know I had all these tasks today to do, but I took initiative and I binned them all off and did this thing elsewhere. Because that's actually a misappropriation of investment. So we need to be able to say, okay, what's a quick thing I could do to test this to know whether to go to the next stage? So problem solving, be able to come up with quick solutions and that kind of test mindset. If you're going to do those things, you have to have psychological safety to fail. Because if I can't test something and prove myself wrong, if I can't take initiative and find out, actually, that wasn't the solution I thought it was, I'm never going to try. And I think a big part of leadership that we're trying to teach across big companies now is how do you, in parallel and overlappingly, train early careers, middle management and senior leadership teams about how to build that psychological safety, not just to innovate at the big levels, because we kind of know that if you want to build the moonshot ventures for the company, you have to have this test and learn, fail fast. We've got all these buzzwords. But in the actual culture of the company, in how you upskill new talent, in how you support people, and the other place we're seeing this hugely is around applications of AI. So one of the things that leaders have to do, if they want to encourage team members to use AI, if you don't have the psychological safety that you're not just trying to get me out of a job, if you don't have the psychological safety that you can be part of shaping this, no one's going to try it, okay? Everyone's going to be Kodak, and they still will be out of a job, but they're not going to adapt themselves in the process because they're going to be protected in the short term.
To wrap us up, I really want to know what some of the other maybe biggest learnings, or I think a better word is the most common patterns you notice training people in the things and the areas you train them through GuessWorks. What are you seeing folks need the most, struggle with the most, quote unquote, fail with the most often?
I think the number one thing we see, and I won't lie, I do think so much of when you're delivering training, it is like the red car psychology, right? When someone points out a red car, you see red cars everywhere. So when I'm reflecting my personal life about goal setting, obviously everywhere I'm like,
confirmation bias.
You haven't set a goal.
Yeah.
So I do think one of the things is that we're often running towards something, having not clearly defined whether we actually want what we're running towards. So in the startup space, that's people going towards venture funding as default when actually they don't want that journey. That journey is less likely for them and they don't want it if they could get it. So that breeds misery, dead businesses, burnout founders. On the corporate side, I think there's a lot of people who are pushing water uphill in cultures that are still essentially immune systems designed to kill difference. So I think one of the things that we've been talking about for decades is breeding these innovation cultures. And I think one thing that I've been talking about for a long time that I fundamentally believe in is you can't it doesn't work to segregate innovation in a beautiful box with bean bags and a bingo machine or a pool table. If you want some ventures to work, that works. But if you want the wider companies to be able to keep up with the level of uncertainty we're going through, then you have to be building this. And I actually don't always think of it as innovation because I think that puts people off. I think people have the wrong mindset with it. But if you want this ability for the organization to function in uncertainty and to move forward in uncertainty in a way that is adaptive and resilient, then you have to be training these skills in everyone. And they aren't going to look the same, right? Not everyone needs to be able to build product. Not everyone needs to be able to launch a new business or disrupt the business model of the whole company. We would die if that was the case in big companies because there would be no one to actually make the money that pays for those activities. But I am seeing a pattern where the soft skills, in inverted commas, that underpin all of that reinforce the culture people have been trying to build for years, are still fundamentally uninvested in. So we see so many companies saying, well, for those kind of soft skills, we actually just do the training in-house with our own HR teams. When we speak to the HR teams, it's not that they're desperate to do this. It's not that they actually think they've got the kind of repeatable process for it. It's that they find it really hard to get buy-in to actually bring in trainers to deliver it. Mm-hmm. And then what we see time and time again is the problems that get reported, stagnating revenue, inability to actually launch in new markets as successfully as hyped up, inability to keep costs under control or to bring them down as actually fast as we could with the launch of new technology daily. All of that is really attributable not just to these hard skills of how do you learn how to use AI and the technical skills of how do we build better AI products internally, but also the soft skills of how do you actually take those small steps to embrace uncertainty, take initiative, navigate it with both a vision and also the practical skills to sustain even when it's not super stable around you.
I've been making the argument with people that with the way AI is going to, for the vast majority of businesses, make it almost impossible to compete on product, right? It's going to be so easy to put this feature in. Your competitor does that feature, cool, I'll put it in too. The way you stand out is by being the you that gets the greatest results, is those character skills, quote unquote, soft skills.
But I'm controversial. I don't think there's anything new there apart from the pace at which that happens. So I've been saying to founders for years, that's, okay, what's to stop you building that? And your competitor going, thanks for proving that, we'll build it too, right? We see it everywhere, right? Monzo launches a new feature. Of course, Revolut's going to copy it within a week if it proves successful. The big banks are much slower to do that, but they'll do it eventually. It's just a speed thing. AI does accelerate that process. So you don't get to enjoy the advantages of the new feature you created for very long. But the question for me has always been about defensibility of what does doing something first build you as a moat in terms of data, in terms of user base, in terms of knowing someone better so that because you've been working with them that bit longer, you can deliver more value to them. And so for me, actually the equation doesn't shift. Your job as a company is always to be working out what's the value our customer prizes most highly, how can I deliver that to them the more they're with us.
I completely agree. And, okay, so I think it's a yes and situation.
Oh, hello, improv.
Hello. And because of the way our quarterly cycles worked, we could pretend like what you just said wasn't the case.
Yeah. I mean,
and now we won't have the chance, which is a good thing because it means people will need to start doing it. Anyway, I need to wrap this up for time. Hattie, this has been really, really cool. I'm not just saying this because you said you like the validation.
I love validate.
But I'm going to do it anyway. It's been so cool to get to know you slowly over the years and see the way that you have done exactly what you've described, where you adapt into a new environment. Even though you said that sometimes you don't, from my outside, very limited perspective, you are very good at walking your talk and doing the things that you try to support other people to do, that you support other people to do. And that means that you show up as this authentic person people can relate to. And the reason why I love that definition of charisma is because you have that warmth, you have that authenticity, and you've got incredible competency to back it up. But by being very human focused, you're able to I think that's going to serve you really well long term. I think it always serves you really well long term, but like I was just saying, our world's getting messier, and you're going to be one of those people that's able to be Superwoman in a time when it feels like the world is going to get messier and crazier.
I mean, wow, thank you. That's quite a lot to suggest. I think what I'm hearing and want to play back, and by the way, I find it fascinating what we compliment other people, because everything you just said I would say about you. And not just because you've just said it to me, right? But like very candidly, if I went first, I'd say very similar things. And I think what you're saying that I think is a message for a lot of people listening is actually what I heard there as a superpower is human, not being super. And I think a lot of what we've talked about today is actually taking away those superhuman expectations from ourselves and allowing ourselves to be authentic, that we feel like we've not figured it out, but I'm going to try and help you figure it out. I think that's the bravest thing you can say as someone who tries to support other people. I don't have all the answers. I have the empathy because I'm trying to work them out myself. And whatever I've learned, I'm going to share with you. But by the way, it doesn't mean I think it's easy, because I'm living it too. And I know it's really hard to practice what I preach, because I struggle with it too. And I think we get so divorced from the idea that that's acceptable. But everything you've just told me, I think maybe for people listening, even if you don't have a 7 sat across to me saying these lovely things to you, I'd love to encourage listeners to kind of reflect. What are those really human, not crazy expectations you can put on yourself that actually are about that authenticity and that connection and working out what you love doing and what brings you all those emotions we talked about earlier, but without overtaxing yourself.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I have a closing question I ask everyone who comes on the show. The show is called Lost and Searching. And so I'd love to know, Hattie, for you right now, what is the number one question that you are still searching for the answer to?
Oh, such a good question. I think the thing I keep batting back and forth, which has been quite a central question lately, is what is work-life balance? Mm-hmm. And is that even the right term? But essentially, what does the life design that will make me happy in the long term look like? And how do I give myself permission to weigh that more highly than the short term sometimes?
Have you met Rachel Trumasi Corson? I've probably totally mispronounced her last name.
No.
She's really, really cool. She's come on here before, and I'm going to intro you. You two need to meet. She has this whole thing that work-life balance doesn't exist. Instead, it's work-life harmony.
Yes.
And I love this for 2 reasons. One, because I think work-life balance is bullshit, because there is no work-life, there's just life. And number 2, I think balance is an unhelpful word, because your balance and my balance will be 2 different things. So instead, harmony reframes balance into, in what am I harmonized in my life right now? Yeah. Or instead of the balance, there is your balance, which I love. And so I think it's a really powerful question to be asking yourself, right? Because when you apply all the things you have just asked us to apply, you get a really personalized version. And whatever the answer is, it will only ever be a personalized version for you.
And at a given point in time. I think that's the other thing I need to remember that I'm going to share in case others need to remember it too, right? We come up with like, what is harmony for me? And then something in your life changes, but you don't change the harmony definition.
I love it. Hattie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. It's been great to chat.
Thanks so much.
Well, look at you making it to the end of the episode. Welcome. There's a lot more for you to do. If you're still here, there's a full playlist on YouTube down below. There's a recommended video probably somewhere around the screen or down below, and so much more. Give us a follow. Help share if you're here. Hey, maybe you enjoyed it. And look, this show only grows with your help. So again, I know you're probably bored of hearing it, but it would mean the world to me if you help us out and paid it forward and shared it around. And hey, you never know how this will help someone else. So thank you so much for being here, for being a part of it. Lots of love, and here is to your success. See you soon.